Welcome to the MMHP and the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history.
Hello, Michigan music lovers. This is Scott Baker. I want to welcome you to the Michigan Music History Podcast. I am flanked by Michigan music royalty. To the left, Dr. J. To the right, Sir Fred. We cut from just around the block of the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan, here at Studio 163 in Essexville. And now it's time to grab a favorite beverage, hit the cruise, and take a trip back with us through Michigan's rich music history.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
Test us every week, Fred. That's what it's all about. I'm glad to see you, my friend.
Me too. Better to be seen than viewed.
Yeah, definitely.
We're back here at Studio 163 in Essexville, Michigan, hitting the podcast show just as winter is about to start ripping in here in early December. And we've managed to put together a podcast tonight that is really super unique in the fact that we've reunited two musician friends that have stayed well connected, but at the same time live in different parts of Michigan, have a huge tie to Michigan folklore, folk music, and roots music, and still play to this day. And Dr. J, Sir Fred, and myself want to thank George Heritier for coming up from Detroit area. How you doing, George?
I'm doing good.
And Mr. Andrew Rogers, he was here from Essexville, Michigan.
No, Bay City.
Well, Bay City, around the block here, yes.
That was about 9 years ago.
Yeah. How are you guys doing? You're hanging it healthy in the pandemic. I know this is our most masked episode ever, and I think it's the big comeback here for the COVID. So, how's everybody's healthy and doing good?
Hanging in there.
Yeah.
Trying.
Yeah, but how's things going, Dr. J? We haven't talked in a few weeks. Is anything new?
No, the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame exhibit at the Historical Museum of Bay County is moving forward. We're still hopeful that in February of 2022, we're going to open it to the public. Hopefully, COVID is not going to interfere with that. You know, it's disrupted life immeasurably here for the last, I don't know how many months, 18 months or whatever. Terrible. Mm-hmm. So,
that's outstanding news. Well. February is finally we have a date. I mean, we said possibly fall, possibly winter. We're looking at February then. Okay.
Right. That's the goal.
All right. That Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has already kind of got a little bit of preview over at Scotty Sandbar with some of the items that you've had up over the years. And we want to make sure that people know that once the Hall of Fame is up, they're going to have two places that they can go see.
We're going to keep it at Scotty's. Yep. It's a great music venue and, an ideal spot for it.
Right on. And Sir Fred, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good now.
You made it home. You were on the DL list for tonight.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I got released from the hospital last night,
and
9 o'clock.
You've been healthy, but you had to get a procedure done, and life
Seems
is
like
good.
It worked, and I feel pretty good.
Well, you're not asleep in the chair right now, which usually is the case. So
right.
No, I'm messing. I spent a lot of time messing with Fred on the show. I don't know if you guys heard it, but he's our washboard king over there, and he's got the history. So we are so thankful to see you, buddy. Thank you for making the show.
Yeah,
he has two of his friends here tonight, and we want to get in some deep detail. And Fred's got a lot of questions he wants to bring out because he's written a book with a lot of these guys in mind. And Dr. J has some history going back with him as well. So I'm going to let Fred take over the night and start. I want to go back early with George and Andrew, the earliest times for both their music careers. So what do you guys remember of that? I mean, Fred, I know he was at your wedding. He played your wedding. But.
Right, and that was in 1970. And, I don't know a great deal of history about the Draytons, but, they were, it was kind of unusual in 1970 to have a rock and roll band at a wedding. And I know some of the older guests at our wedding reception were not happy with you guys, but we loved it. And, to this day, you guys played Honest I Do by Jimmy Reed as the dance for the bride and the groom. So that is officially our song, and every time either we play the version by the Stones or, of course, the original by Jimmy Reed, we think of you guys.
I love
and it was fun. I don't know what Charlie. There was a snapshot taken of you guys at the wedding, and it has you in it singing, and Charlie you can see on the keyboards, and your bass player, who I don't.
Shelby Hargett.
Was that Shelby? Mm-hmm. Okay, because I had done something on the Intruders,
Right.
on my webpage, and I didn't realize that.
Mike Cook was in the band too,
Wow.
and he was in the Intruders.
Yes. All right. I interviewed Mike.
Yeah, they won the Battle of the Bands. Out of
Yes,
Roll
they
Area.
did. Right. Okay.
And then-
Was
and
the
then-
drummer Scott Alshaver?
Yes, it was.
And I just bought a still life. The art department gallery is now open right below where Mickey's Big Bop Teen Club was on Midland Street, which is quite a little chunk of Bay City history right there. And Miles Rosnowski, one of the co-owners, is doing a lot of the work with me at the museum. He's just an ace frame guy for hanging frames and creating all kinds of signage and so on. So, anyways, I don't know where I was going with that, but what I wanted to ask you about, I know what it was. We bought one of Scott's paintings for our apartment in New Jersey. And again, the same idea. Scott was the drummer of your band, and so there's that little connection. And it was kind of cool. It works real well. But was that your first band, the Draytons?
Oh no! I was a freshman in high school. In my first band, the Caretakers.
And that was here in Bay City?
It was here it was in the South End.
Okay. The Caretakers.
South End band. Yes, South End Garage Band.
Right on. What year?
1966.
66. And what school were you at? Central? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Did you guys get to play at Band Canyon or anything, George?
Yes, we did.
Did you play the matinees? Because you guys were kind of young then. At that soon.
We may have played a few matinees, but we got some evenings too.
Did you really?
Yep.
All right.
We looked old for our age.
So who else?
I did because I was the youngest guy in the band.
Who else was in the band besides you?
Well, let's see. Dave Myers was the drummer. He later went on to play with the Epics, which was John Hale and John
Hill,
Smith and
sure.
Al Hill. Who else? Boy, we kicked out our bass player, so I had to learn on the job. And then Andy Nowak was the rhythm player. And Jim Tebow was the guitar player, who was really a good guitar player. Really, really good guitar player.
So how does this evolve into the Draytons then?
Well, the Sand, wasn't it? Somewhere in there?
Oh, that was later.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was?
The Draytons, Charlie Walmsley, Selby Hargett, Mike Cook, and Scott Shaver and I grew up together. I mean, and Andy was kind of part of our circle too, because he used to jam with us all the time. So, I mean, we knew each other since 7th, 8th grade. And, when the Beatles came along, we just all got instruments and learned how to play. And what are you going to do? You're going to play with your buddies and sing with your buddies. And that's what we did. It was a great time to grow up.
Now,
Wonderful time.
You were still in high school when
Yep.
the Draytons came together?
We were all out by then.
Because who recommended your band to me was Dennis Dusso.
Ah, yep.
Dennis grew up across the street from me on Rose Street.
Mm-hmm.
So we had known each other, forever.
Sure.
So that's how that happened.
And I went back to 4th grade with Dennis because I went to Woodside School there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I attended Woodside also, years before you did.
Sure.
But, that's fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah, it's too bad you guys never recorded anything.
Yeah. There were a couple of good originals.
Yes, I thought your band was terrific. You know.
We had fun.
Yeah.
When did you start your recording, George? When's the first time you hit a studio or did it hit record on something and start laying down? Where were you at in your career at that point?
I did a couple of tracks with Jaywalker and the Jayhawkers.
And that would have been what?
That would have been about 1968. I played bass with them. And, they already had a name in the area because Jay was a local DJ,
Sure.
Saginaw DJ, and he got airplay.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that song never got airplay. So
That was, you would be, what, 11th grade around then or
Yep,
something?
yep.
Okay.
Now, where did you record with him? Because he was recording for Deltron Records, which was associated with Delta Promotions.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you work with Bill Kehoe or Jim Atherton or any of these people?
I did some work with Bill Kehoe, not with Jay, but with, I think, with Sand. Sand was a band that I was in after I graduated. It was mainly Midland guys.
Randy Markey.
Randy Markey, yep. Mark Nelson, Paige McDonald.
That was after the Draytons?
I think it was before.
It might have been before.
Okay,
actually.
so you did have, you were calling that out earlier.
Right.
So it does fall in there between in the high school and that band then.
Right. And then John Hale was the bass player in that band.
Okay.
That's another aspect of Bay City music, was a couple of years older than me, probably a year older than you, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
John Hale and Tom Smith
Oh, yeah.
made news, first of all, because they wouldn't get their hair cut and they got kicked out of Central High School. But they were really good musicians, and they, were in the best band in the city at the time, the Epics.
Yeah, they were kind of the house band at Van Canyon.
Yeah, they were.
And I wrote a story about that whole controversy of the hair at Bay City Central. What a big, and you look at the picture of those guys, it was in the Bay City Times. You're thinking, what? I mean, that hair is not very long at all.
And Tom Smith's mother, Marion Smith, was a big supporter. Tom could do no wrong. So when he got kicked out of school, she fought that and got him back in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as he wanted to stay in. I think he finally ended.
Well, she wrote a letter to Lyndon Johnson.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, she was, really pretty forward thinking. That was
She
great
was,
for her.
yeah.
Yeah.
Randy Markey sent me that Dicto 45 that you guys recorded.
That's
I
the
wa-
68?
I wasn't on that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had a different singer for that. And I do believe that Dick Wagner produced that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said he still has a couple boxes of them.
Not surprised.
I'm going to have to. Do you still have some of your 45s? Yeah, maybe we can get something going at the museum.
Okay.
And have kind of like a little record department or record and CD department. And,
I have one box left.
Promote, because that was you had that great package that Terry Burt shot the Tom. We're doing a big display of Tom Burt at the museum, all the stuff he did.
Oh, cool.
But Terry in his own right was pretty, and still is a pretty good photographer. Yeah, I thought that was an amazing package. It kind of folded out into a poster, and
that would have been which record are you talking about, Gary?
the Third Street Bridge,
Third Street
song
Bridge,
and
which is
the Ballad of the Last Chance.
Okay.
And I think I asked you about this before, whether there were any thought of doing more kind of Bay City or Bay County related songs.
At the time, that pretty much took care of everything in my sphere.
It was all you could do to get John Kilbourne to get that thing out the door.
John Kilbourne. I was trying to remember his name.
And with the money that we all had to
Yeah.
invest in it.
I pretty much wrote the Ballad of the Last Chance just so I had a B-side for the Third Street Bridge song.
I remember we played
Well,
there.
what a great title for a bar. And of course it's right on the banks of the Saginaw River, going across the old Third Street Bridge before you went to the east side.
The Belinda Street.
Or I mean, Belinda Street Bridge, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And what year did you record that one?
1976.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't open this.
I think
We
it
didn't
was
open the store until '75, so it had to be.
Yeah.
The bridge fell in '76.
Yep.
So we probably did that in the '76 or in the beginning of
Yeah.
'77.
It wasn't released till 77.
Okay. And that's definitely kind of well known, especially coming out of our state. It's a big little folklore song that I've come to know over the years, and until I finally get to meet you a couple of years ago. But was that the first single that you put out that you were like the band leader on? Or?
That's like the only single.
Okay. Andrew, are you on that cut?
I'm on the Last Chance side.
Yeah.
I don't know why I wasn't on the first side, but maybe I got there late or something.
We just threw it together. Who
They
knows?
threw it pretty fast in John Kilbourne's living room.
Yeah.
And
Freddie, you played on it too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Fred did.
Fred's on that too, yeah. Both A and B sides?
Yep, I think so.
I think so, yeah.
I remember we played at the Last Chance.
Yep.
Andy and John Colhut and you and I.
Is that washboard, Fred?
Yep.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Okay. Andrew, when did it start for you? What year were you kicking it in?
Jeez, I started playing piano when I was 4.5.
Uh-huh.
How about that? With a group of kids in a room with Mrs. Lucille Pasick on Carroll Road, on Carroll Park. And it slowly went from a group of kids to single lessons. But I hated piano lessons. My eyes are terrible, and I couldn't read the music in front of me, so she'd slap my hands and say, "Stop looking at the music." So that was the end of my piano days. I mean, it's good to have that as a background for any musician to know a little bit of piano, because you can never go wrong. You can still be a chick magnet if you know a little piano. But we had a friend in the family named Arnold Taylor, who was a teacher in Bay City. He was one of the 3 or 4 musicians returning back from the war who were teaching strings in the schools. And Arnold Taylor was a great viola player, and there happened to be a violin in the family. So they said, "Here, Andy, this is yours. Why don't you take violin lessons?" So I took violin lessons for about 6 or 7 years, just about 12 or 13, and I played right through high school. And Arnold was a real mentor. Good, what a saint he was. He had a business in Bay City called 20th Century Cleaners with his family, and he was a dry cleaner, but he was also a school teacher on the side. He taught at Essexville schools. He taught in a couple other Pinconning schools, maybe, I don't know, but he was a great proponent of string music, and they were trying to get young kids to play strings like me, so we could go up through the ranks and end up in the orchestras, which were still happening in high schools. Mm-hmm. And so I played violin. I started playing violin with Washington Schools Orchestra when I was in the 5th grade, because they needed more violins. And Washington School at the time, and it was the old building too. It was there was 6 through 8. And they recruited me in the 5th grade, and from there I basically played through high school. And we had a couple of guys leading the music department in Bay City at the time. There was Walter Kramer at Bay City Central, and there was Douglas Campbell at Washington School. They could arrange anything, and they arranged a Central Fight song. I think they still use the same arrangement today. And Doug Campbell left for Detroit area because there was an austerity program. The voters voted down millage, and so we had no orchestra for a year.
Music and art, first things
This
to go.
is 1964, I believe. Lasted for about a year, and the voters finally came to their senses and voted back the millage so we could have orchestra again. So I lost out a year. Actually, we played after hours one year with the orchestra after regular school and Kramer wasn't getting paid. I mean, we just did it to keep the orchestra going, because he knew that if he quit for a year, it would never happen again. So I kept playing through high school, went to Interlochen for a couple summers, for a couple weeks on an all-state program, and loved the experience. And I realized there's some really good violin players out there as kids. And I kind of also realized that I was never going to be a professional violin player in an orchestra. That was not my career choice. But I still like playing, and I liked the experience. Came back, and I guess when it came time to go to college, and I went to Michigan, I put the violin under a bed for about a year, never even touched it, and because there was no outlet until I found other musicians to play with. And by the second year in college, or sooner, I learned there was a place down the street on Hill Street called the Ark, in a house, and I'd go there and see Woody Guthrie's uncle, Jack Guthrie, I think his name was, and other great musicians there that just inspired me to listen and go. I just a block away, so I'd walk over there and listen, and found some kindred musicians to play with, and we started a little jug band, because they had Wednesday night hoots over there, and Wednesday night hoots at the Ark was free, I think, or 50 cents or something like that, and we could play and get in for free. So a few musicians out of my dorm at East Quad, which was part of the residential college, which I was in at the time, we got together and created a jug band called the Electric Cosmic Duck. That was my first band.
Nice.
And
What year is that?
This was this is about 1968, 69.
Okay.
I understand I replaced another violin player in that band. His name was Andy Stein. Who?
Really?
Andy Stein was. Andy Stein was a notorious violin player at the University of Michigan. He left just before I got there. He would, they'd all come. He'd show up for the orchestra in his baggy pants and his gray suits, and everybody else would be in white tie and tails. And he was like the concert master. So he pissed off a lot of people, but he was a great player. And that's another story. But when he left Ann Arbor, I took his place in this little jug band. We lasted for about a year. But I came in, through the ARC, I came into contact with, I volunteered, serve coffee. I'd take a camera because I was doing photography at the same time. And I would shoot pictures in there and also start playing with these. I got to sit in with these great musicians. And I could rattle off a ton of names of people I played with, like Ramblin' Jack Elliott and Utah Phillips and David Bromberg, who I got to be good friends with. He almost took me to New York. Jody Stecker replaced me on his album, so I stayed. It's probably a good thing I didn't go to New York. But I played with so many. They have these circles on Wednesday nights because musicians that would come to the Ark would usually live there. They wouldn't just come for a day. They would. They might stay there for a couple weeks. I know that Leon Redbone lived there for a summer.
Wow.
He hid out there. One day he walks in the kitchen. I'm on my way to Mariposa, and he says, Linda Siglin, who was one of the operators, she says, here's Leon. And I go and shake his hand, and he's just going in the refrigerator to get a sandwich or something like that. And these people lived at the Ark, and I got to know in play with some of these great musicians, and that got me on the road to playing. And I befriended a guy who was living in Detroit. His name was Andy Cohen. Andy Cohen is originally from Boston, but he married a girl and lived in Detroit. And he was playing the chessmate in Detroit, and then he was playing the Ark quite a bit. And he had quite a following in Michigan, like a couple of people like Bob White and Pammy Ostergren, and some of these musicians would even come to Bay City if they knew there was a gig, like at the Cellar in Bay City or somewhere like the Canterbury House in Kalamazoo in Western Michigan, and those places, they find them. And I started tagging along. I got to play quite a few gigs with Cohen. He liked the idea of having a fiddler play along with his guitar, and he's quite a good Piedmont blues guitar player, great guitar player. He's one of the guys that led Reverend Gary Davis around. So he learned a lot of Reverend Gary Davis style playing. He still does it today. He's still going strong. He's got to be about 77,
Incredible.
78 years old.
I think he's 75 because he's a year older than I am.
He and I did an album over at Andy Reid's place about 5 years ago. It's still in the can because it needs more work. But Cohen and we're calling it Music of the Andes. And,
Awesome.
and we're still working on that one. So
did you record any of those jams, Wednesday nights and all those players that you played with? Did anything pop out of that from back in the day?
Yes and no. David Siglin, who was the operator of the Ark, recorded just about everything. He had a huge tape recorder system set up above the listing room. It was in a house, so he had it all set up. He recorded nearly everything, and he compiled tons of tapes. When he retired, he gave everything to the Bentley Library, and some of it is available now. You can go into the Bentley Library and check their archives. You can get some of these all the photographs. I shot a ton of photographs and just gave it to him because I had access to a darkroom at East Quad. Bring the photos over the next day, hand them to the musicians. They have tremendous egos, and they all are thrilled to get a picture of themselves playing the night before. And that's another way I got to meet musicians. It was a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Take a fiddle or take a camera. And Siglin, in the meantime, was recording everything, and so there is a lot. Some of it has been released, but not a lot of it. But I think the Bentley Library has a lot more.
There's an article in the new Ann Arbor Observer all about that. I just read it this morning.
About the Bentley?
Well, about Dave Ziegler and recording everything.
Well, I think they're trying to get some more money so they can control the product.
What an archive box set that would be.
God. There was a tribute concert I'll tell you, I don't know if I should mention the story. There was one particular tape that Dave Siglin told me that they recorded a Woody Guthrie memorial concert. You know, these great musicians came in to play, and somehow the tape, someone borrowed the tape. I won't mention who it is, and they erased it. You know, they overwrote the tape.
Oh.
Pissed Siglin off. He'd never spoken to that person again.
Oh,
but you might not want to put that on the record there, but
no, that's a good story. No, that's fair. You're fair.
You didn't mention any names. It's
Yeah,
all
you're all
right.
fair.
That's right.
If you don't want it, we'll talk later. But that's fair.
But
Now, Leon Redbone,
yes,
you and him got a recording somewhere?
no.
Okay.
I met
I'm
him.
fascinated with that guy. I had no clue about that.
There was a picture of him outside the door, and he looked just like me, but with the hat, the hat, and the little mustache, and I could have passed as a double at the time, but not anymore. But Leon and I never played together. I got to see him play a few times at the Power Center down there, and of course at Mariposa in Toronto, I saw him play a few times, but I never got that close to him except to shake his hand in the kitchen of the Ark.
Wonderful. Now, whoever could go through those tapes that you guys were just talking about in that archive, someone's going to have to sit there and figure out who's on what. I mean, that's probably not kept as a...
I made my own. I made a couple of tapes on my own, but no, not Leon Redbone. But I went in there a couple times after I graduated from college and went back. I would take a tape recorder and put it next to one of the PA speakers and just cover it up with a towel. So I don't think Siglin ever found out, but
Nice.
I don't think he would care today if I shared it with him.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. They offer new and used records, including local to Michigan original vinyl and CDs, as well as clothing, electronic equipment, funky household items, music gear, and stringed instrument repair. You can find them on the web or call 989-402-1411.
Andy, do you have any of those photographs you took? Do you have any negatives or anything like that?
I have. Well, that's a sad story. I have some of the negatives, but very few. All of the negatives were in a box at East Quad in the dark room over there. And when I left, I didn't take the box with me. I went back about a month later, and it was gone. Mm-hmm. I gave away so many prints. I gave away the best prints to the Ark and the musicians. So those prints still exist. But I have a few of prints left in my archives, but certainly not the total record of it. That's one of the biggest regrets I have today is that I lost those negatives from the Ark.
Yeah, that's
from those
too
early
bad.
days.
Yeah, really. Well, if you've got some interesting stuff, maybe somewhere down the line, we can display some of that at the museum.
Well, since then, I've continued to take pictures for the Ark, and I still do today. In fact, they say I'm the official photographer for the Ann Arbor Folk Festival, so I get in there to shoot pictures in the front row of Hillage Auditorium next January.
Fantastic.
I'm doing that for 30 years.
Would you be interested in maybe displaying some of your work?
Well, I've always been interested in doing that, but it'd be a tremendous effort to put it together, and probably fairly expensive. So to get things printed, that's the thing. Up until 2003, everything was film, and I have most of those negatives from the film days. From 2003 on, I have everything on digital, so that's easy to reproduce. And I go back and get pictures out of those archives all the time.
Well, I'm working with Avram Golden for a lot of the stuff we're doing at the museum. Do you know Avram?
Yes.
So he could probably do a pretty good job.
I have the printer to do it. I mean, I could print them, but
right.
It still takes a lot of time to find the negatives and get your magnifying glass out and make sure that you got the best one. It certainly is a lot easier with computers and digital cameras these days. But I have most of the negatives from those early folk festival years, right down to, I want to say I started shooting officially for them around 87, 88, 89, and right through 2003 was filmed.
And when you go up to the Ark, the photos that you see as you enter the building, all the way through the halls, they're all yours, right?
They're I'd say about 85%.
Yeah, they're great.
They had other photographers shooting for them too. And so there was for the first few years that I was shooting, there was another guy there, and he was up front too. But I would supply more prints than he did, and they took mine. Every year I'd show up in the office and they say, "Here you go. Which ones do you want?" And we'd make big 16 by 20s, Saginaw Photo would do all the work and take them down. They're 16 by 20, black and white. Everything's got to be black and white, and we make the wall. It started out very small, and it's just grown to a gallery, and I'm just amazed to see how it's grown today, because it's very popular at the place now. At the art, it's a major part of the room.
Yeah, it's part of being there. Yeah.
And the front doors. They took my artwork, and a young girl named Eden, I can't think of her first name. She's a great graphic artist. She took my photos. We worked on a couple collages, and they worked them into the glass. They actually painted them, baked them into the glass on the front doors of the art.
Wow.
So my photos are now baked into the glass, and
amazing.
Walk in. I'm just thrilled.
So where we left off is those tapes. They're at the college, another college down there. You just read a story this morning, Fred, right?
Yeah, and they had a new Ann Arbor Observer. There's a whole big article about.
That's going to be interesting to follow that story.
The tapes.
And then, Andrew, you were part of that. Now, what brought you back to the area, or how did you get reconnected with George, or how did this happen?
I never really. Well, I knew George all through the 70s and 80s we saw each other all the time until he moved. I got married and he moved down to Oak Park.
Ypsilanti,
and then Oak Park.
Well, Detroit area before Oak Park.
I was either fortunate or unfortunate to take a different career path, because I guess I had a family business that I could come back to in Bay City. And most of my friends didn't have anything to come back to after college. So, and a lot of them just left. But we had this family business, and I was in the auto parts business for until 1986. And it was too good to give up. I knew that if I didn't get myself in there, that our family would lose the whole thing to other members of the family. I really wanted to make sure that I supported my father and our family, and I knew I could do it. And I also realized that if I worked in the business, I could make myself fairly independent, so I could keep playing music and not have to worry about putting a roof over my head. So
right.
So it was good in that regard. And I played with different bands, like the Draytons once in a while. With the Gilmore Brothers, I played from 74, 75.
Was that around here?
Oh,
that was here.
Yeah, that's where I first saw you, playing with the Gilmore Brothers at the Holiday Inn.
And with Pat and Sandy McGuinn, who I'd known since the Cellar days of 1968, 69. I always kept up with Pat. Even though Pat and Sandy McGuinn then moved to South Carolina around 75, 74, 75. And but I still kept up with him. And he'd come back to Michigan. And we continued to play until he died in 90, 91, 92.
Yeah.
So when was the first time that you got on a release like, was it the 3rd Street Bridge where you got printed, I would say?
That was probably the first one, yes. And then right around that time also, when I was playing with the Gilmore Brothers, John Gilmore decided we're going to put out our own record. So we put out 2 or 3 records on his label, Michigan Archives.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You got copies of those, Fred?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Of course.
The Gilmore Brothers. Yeah. I would like to hear those.
John Gilmore, Greg Gilmore, Mike Yankee, and myself, and occasionally Fred, and you can name some more people. Jigger, and from
Tom
Bridgeport,
Jurgens.
Tom Jurgens, his brother David Gilmore, his sisters. They'd all get up and sing an Irish ballad, and we played regionally. We played as far as Chicago. And they went to Brandywine and played a festival over there in the east end of the country, and
wow.
We played Battleground, Indiana, a couple times. It was interesting times for festivals and for bands. And
was it a lot of festivals?
A lot of festivals in the summer. Played Wheatland. We did play with the Wheatland Spring Festival in 1980, and I can remember that one. And played a lot around in bars in Michigan, mainly Sullivan's on Bay Road. It was a haunt, especially around St. Patrick's Day. Then you got triple scale.
Yeah. George, where did you pick up on that lineage? There, you made your way up to talking about the 3rd Street Bridge recording and your band history. Where did it go from there?
Well, that one song, that one record kept me in work for a good 10 years.
Unbelievable. And that's such a... We're actually, before we get into the further... Can we hear you guys play that?
Sure.
We were very lucky to have them bring their instruments with us for a little reunion performance today.
All right, wing it. We haven't even rehearsed this, so
This ought to be fun. All right. Ready, Andy?
I think so.
1, 2, 3. I remember the day that the bridge fell in, that old 3rd Street Bridge up in Bay City, Michigan. Now she's gone, oh yeah, solid gone. Somebody must have thought that old bridge was doing fine. Hell, she ain't old, she was only built in 1889. And now she's gone, oh yeah, real gone. I never heard it said that old 3rd Street was the best. My grandpa used to warn that she was worse than all the rest. Now she's gone, oh yeah, solid gone. Oh, well, you can take Independence, you can take Memorial. Lafayette's still moving, that old 3rd Street had to fall. And now she's gone, oh yeah, real gone. Play it, Andy. Good fortune had that only 2 were on her when she gave a bridge tender and his kid, and they escaped to their Waterloo grave. Now she's gone, oh yeah, solid gone. Well, speculation has it that she was bumped a bit, based on the evidence of a passing ship and the other 3 bridges hit. Now she's gone, oh yeah, real gone. Oh, well, you can take Independence, you can take Memorial. Lafayette's still moving, that old 3rd Street had to fall. Now she's gone, oh yeah, real gone. One more time, Andy. Gonna lead to tell me where you gonna go. Roads and bridges everywhere are shaky, don't you know? They're pretty bad, they're getting worse. Oh, well, how's that for a symbol? Tell me, how's that for a chill? The infrastructure's crumbling, no one wants to put the bill, just pass the buck and walk away. Oh. Well, I remember the day that the bridge fell in, that old 3rd Street Bridge up in Bay City, Michigan. Yodelay, yodelay. Take it home, Andy.
Yeah, man.
Just like falling off a bike.
That was great.
Now there's a song that's on the way back around for all those new bridges getting built here in the next 3 years.
Yes,
and,
indeed. What a classic.
Timing couldn't have been more appropriate for that. Oh, my Lord.
As a matter of fact, those last 2 verses, I rewrote them a couple of years ago.
Did you?
Yeah. Just because of the infrastructure.
Yeah, I was like, this is so timely.
Yeah, yeah.
You got it. Well, thank you both for playing that. That is a memory that's going to hit a lot of people if they get to hear this podcast. And man, maybe if all things clear up, we can have a little show where we can get you guys back on stage for this, and
That'd be wonderful.
start booking it,
I would love it. I would love it.
On Facebook the other day, George, there was a picture of you performing with the Buffalo Chips.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah, I saw that.
That was a great photo. And that band was after Sand, is that right?
Yep.
And John Hale played in that band
John
with
Hale
you.
was in that band. Yep.
Rick Stanky.
Rick Stanky was not in the band.
Oh, he wasn't?
No. Mike Haslam, who I understand just passed away a few years ago, was the drummer. Dave Cleveland was the keyboard player. Tom Halisko was the lead guitar player. I played some rhythm, harmonica. Occasionally I'd play bass when John Hale would just sing. And we had a lot of fun.
I think I have that record. Didn't you?
We didn't do a record.
No, I don't remember.
Wasn't there another Buffalo Chips then? Or?
Well, John recorded as the Buffalo Chips out west.
In
right?
Montana.
Right,
Yeah.
Montana.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a chance to talk to him for the first time in many, many years when I was doing that story about the hair. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was nice. I also interviewed, do you remember Diane Osterhout was his girlfriend?
Not well, but yes.
Yeah, all right.
I think, George, I told you I have a little tape of the Buffalo Chips somewhere.
Oh.
But it's not great, but I did get about 20 minutes. So I can share that with you sometime.
We were the first country rock band in the
Yeah.
Saginaw Valley. We were doing Commander Cody songs.
Yep.
We were doing songs off of Sweetheart of the Rodeo by the Byrds. We did a few Merle Haggard songs.
What year? What year is this band?
It's like 71.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember, you guys played at the Saber Room.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
which was a pretty hot spot back in the day.
was.
there.
Oh, God, we had such fun.
Yeah.
Wasn't
So
Mike?
did that end when John moved out west?
Well, John decided to move on, and he and I didn't play together after that. And then I went to, we did play. Well, no.
It seemed to me that the band played after John because I think I saw you at Hidden Hollow or something like that.
No, that was probably really close to the end.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that was Buffalo Chips was after Sand, and when John decided to move on from Buffalo Chips, it just kind of splintered and went away. And then I joined a band from Midland called the R. Peepers Band.
Oh, yeah.
And those guys could play. I mean, don't get me wrong, Buffalo Chips was really good, but these kids could really, really play. And so we were doing all kinds of stuff. We were doing blues, we were doing Steely Dan songs, we were doing Eagles songs, we were doing a few originals, and
Wow.
we had two hot guitar players who could play dual solos. A lot of fun.
And this is crawling into the 70s then at that point.
Yes. But going back a little bit, I have to mention the fact that Sand, a group from Midland that John and I played with Randy Markey, Paige McDonald, Mark Nelson, we actually did make it to the Grandy Ballroom.
That's the band. I was going to just ask you. You said there's a Grandy story.
Yeah, we opened for 10 Years After and Spooky Tooth.
Wow.
How did you get the gig?
We had a good booking agent.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, Markey
Wow.
and McDonald, they were kind of the house band of the Blue Light.
Probably, yeah.
Did you ever play the Blue Light? That seemed like a pretty interesting place.
Blue Light in a couple of bands. I played there a couple of times in a band that I was in with Tom Smith called the Extreme Middle.
Okay.
And that was a pretty good band. That was Tom Smith on keyboards and trumpet, Scratchy Adamczyk on guitar, John Petoskey on drums, and yours truly on bass and vocals.
Okay.
In Daniel's Den? Did you play
Oh,
there?
we played Daniel's Den. That was Sand. We played. We opened for people like Seeger. We once shared a dressing room with Iggy and the Stooges. That was tons of fun. Iggy's a really nice guy until he gets on stage, and then he's scary.
Yeah.
We may have opened for Frost there once or twice.
When I think you went to school with Shara Shambo?
Oh yeah. Well, we both did.
We both did,
Andy
right.
and I both did. Yeah.
Because I'm doing that research, and it said you and Charlie Walmsley and Cher went to the Ginger Blue, or when Cher first went there.
Yep. In
And then
fact,
somewhere along the line, Mary Ellen hooked her up with John Gilmore.
Before that, she played with Chris Miles, who was a really, really good,
Yeah,
who
Chris
I just
and
hooked up with on Facebook a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we've been friends on Facebook.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I told him that Cher passed away.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge loss that we've had in our Michigan lineage here in the last week or so.
But back then, there was so much good music happening in Bay City, Midland, Saginaw. There were a lot of good musicians playing.
And there were a lot of places to play.
There were a lot of
Right.
places to play. Yeah,
Live music was really popular.
Yeah, it was a great time to come up.
You guys played up north, I assume, at what was that secondary one up there that was like the one down here? Was it Second Daniel's Den or something
Well,
up
that was
north?
at Prudenville. There was
Or the
one
Music
there.
Box was in Prudenville.
Okay, I remember you.
So was Daniel's Den.
Oh, really?
Our
Okay.
jug band,
That's-
we played there for the
I was going to say,
opening.
you
Okay.
played at that one show where someone else was here on a podcast where you're like, I was above
Question
you.
Mark and the Mysterians.
That's for Bobby.
They were the headliners.
That's it.
Downstairs,
Yeah.
and we were
When Bobby
kind
was
of-
here, you brought that up. He said,
Right.
sorry,
Right.
taking your crowd.
Yeah, everybody, when they started, because this was like 67, 96 Tears was still very popular, and everybody that was watching us went downstairs.
Yeah.
We lost
Yeah.
everyone.
Did you guys play up there, George, I assume? You guys on the road a lot?
Fair amount.
Yeah.
I don't know that we played up there. I remember playing the Ton's house up in Traverse City.
Okay.
Or no, that was Cadillac.
Well, it was, wasn't it Acme? It was, the Ton's house was it north of Traverse City?
There might have been more than one. The one,
okay.
the one that we played at was in Cadillac.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there must have been more than one.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Teen
Well, there were a lot of
clubs.
those teen clubs.
A lot-
I know
a lot of clubs.
there was even Band Canyon expanded, I think, to Sheboygan.
Yeah.
Pat
really?
Williams
I
was
played
sti-
there. I
yeah,
played there
Pat
twice.
Williams was telling me that
Yeah.
they had like a warehouse or something. It wasn't quite like Band Canyon in Bay City.
And before I was playing professionally, I looked old for my age, so Charlie Walmsley and I got into Band Canyon underage to hear the Birds, touring to,
I was there that
promote.
night.
Yeah, they were touring to promote Mr. Tambourine Man.
Yeah, that was actually the first time they played in Michigan.
Yep.
Was at Band Canyon.
Yep.
They brought all their hippie friends. And
Yeah.
That was amazing.
It was.
The dancers, yes. Actually, those dancers they brought from California.
Right.
They were, they always were dancing when the Birds were playing at Ciro's and those places out in L.A.
Wow. Right along with them. And that will wrap up part one of our interview with Andrew Rogers and George Heritier and their reunion on our Michigan Music History podcast. We want to welcome you back here in a couple weeks for some extra music and conversation from two of our favorite local pals that have gone on to do some pretty great things around the state. We want to thank George and Andrew for bringing all their stories and their time, and we look forward to having you back with us in 2 weeks to hear part two. Until then, enjoy.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and the Electric Kitsch at electrickitch.com.
This podcast wouldn't be here without special help from Studio 163's Alan Garcia, our podcast videographer and wingman, Mr. Mike Beatty, MMHP tagline specialist, Mr. Eddie Switek, and of course, Gary Johnson, Fred Rife, the Electric Kitsch, and all of our special guests, and especially you listeners. We want to thank you.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989. From all of us at the podcast.